It's a pleasure to be here to visit with all of you. I had only about half a cup of coffee this morning, so I may be a little bit slow, but I will try to make up for that with a little bit of water here. I would like to walk you through a little bit of a journey, and just to give you a sense for what the world has. How the world has changed, and some of us who grew up here in this country will relate to icons that I'm about to show you, but also I'm sure that many of you from various parts of the world will have similar feelings. So I will try to walk you through this magnificent journey that the world has embarked in. And starting in the 50s, this picture here that I have for you, I'm sure Ronald Peters remembers a lot of these images. But there was Costa Rica was still is, but it was a very, very unique and peaceful country. Most people didn't really know Costa Rica. They thought we were Puerto Rico. It was easily confused. And we lived in an era of optimism, excitement. You know, World War II had finished, and people were looking forward to the future, to technology, to a great deal of comfort. And that was all brought to us from our neighbors to the north, the United States, and elsewhere in Europe. And you can see here pictures of Superman. This was not the Superman that we see today, but this was a Superman that used to trip on his cape a lot and just jump out the window. We never knew what happened on the other side of the window. And also Marilyn Monroe, icon of the 1950s, and the surrounding pictures of the growing city of San Jose, and the modernism that was just beginning for us. At that time, I was born. I was born in 1950, that same year, along with probably thousands and thousands of other Costa Ricans. And we were affected by strong events that were going on in the world. The genie of nuclear energy had been let out of the bottle, so to speak. And of course, wonderful technological prowess of scientists also could be used for war, and could be used for killing people. In 1952, President Truman gave the green light to develop the hydrogen bomb, which was more powerful than the atomic bomb. And then people realized that we were moving towards an era of what we called MAD, M-A-D, which stood for Mutual Assured Destruction. At the time, President Eisenhower started a program called Atoms for Peace. And that program moved worldwide. He gave a speech at the United Nations in '53 to launch this program where nuclear power could be used for bettering human life and helping people. And that program came here to Costa Rica. We actually had an exhibition in the old airport of La Sabana, where I used to go to learn a little bit about nuclear power. And then, of course, in 1957, another wonderful thing occurred, which was the launching of Sputnik by the Soviet Union. The Soviet Union and the United States really were the only competing superpowers at the time. In an era of essentially an era of confrontation. And the rest of us, the rest of the world, basically just watched. We watched these two giants, duke it out in the sky. Who would be best? Who would best the other? Soviet Union launched Sputnik in 1957, October, and it became a symbol of fear, actually. Many people on the earth began to think that now weapons would fall from the sky, and it would be tantamount to controlling the world. But that was the moment that the space age really was born. And in 1958, a year later, another wonderful thing had happened that most people had forgotten about, or maybe never saw. But I was told about this feat by my grandfather. My mother's father, you see them here, my grandmother and grandmother and grandfather, Roberto and Lydia, in Costa Rica. I was a young boy, 8 years old. It was the diving of the USS Nautilus, the first nuclear-powered submarine, which made a trip that was impossible to do before, and that was to dive in the North Pacific, just north of the Hawaiian Islands, and surface again in the Atlantic Ocean by, of course, traveling underwater under the North Pole. No one was able to do that before, and only a nuclear power boat, an electric boat, could do that. Before that, submarines were diesel powered, and they had batteries. They could go underneath, underwater for maybe a few hours, but they could not go down for days or months as they could do it with this new kind of propulsion system. And that was, as they say now, a game changer. It changed completely the dynamics of strategic, defense for the world. And of course, then other countries developed nuclear power ships, and so that is another important event. And then in 1961, once again, the Soviet Union launched the first human into space. And I remember that day. Many of us, probably many of you, remember that day. Yuri Gagarin, flew and orbited the Earth and landed and became famous and became my hero and became the hero of many young boys and maybe even young girls at the time. And subsequent to that, the United States selected its first group of astronauts. The original 7 astronauts, they were also became instant heroes, and they were instant heroes to me also. I had their pictures in my room, and I wanted to be like them. I wanted to become an astronaut someday, and so I did. Went off to build rockets. I built my first rocket engine and rocket propulsion ship in 1965. Actually, it was not my first. It was probably the first one that I was proud enough to show. But this was competed in a science fair in my high school, in Colegio La Salle, and it was a complete failure. So maybe not complete, actually. It was, we launched, we had a flood in the gymnasium where the exhibits were, and so the gunpowder that we had actually manufactured ourselves had gotten wet. So the first stage of the rocket just smoked for a long time. And then the second stage ignited and it went off. And it flew about maybe 100 meters or so. On top of the second stage was a small capsule with a mouse. As a little white mouse, and the capsule had a parachute. And the capsule deployed and parachute opened, and the mouse survived. It actually had a helmet on. And we took the mouse out of the capsule. It was completely scared, and that mouse jumped away from our hands, and we never saw it again, that mouse. So I graduated from Colegio La Salle in '67, went to work at a bank, went to work to the National Bank of Costa Rica for about a year, and then took off for the United States. My father, in his infinite wisdom, gave me a one-way ticket to the United States. He said, I will give you only a one-way ticket because I know that if I give you a return ticket, you will be back here as soon as you run into trouble. And he was right. So I'm glad that he only gave me a one-way ticket, but he said, if you really run into trouble, you can write to us and we'll find a way to get you back. Of course, there was no email in those days, no internet, no way to really write quite and get a quick response. But I got to go to the United States because I had received a letter. I had written a letter to NASA from Costa Rica. And this is a copy of the letter. And of course, I couldn't understand the letter because I couldn't read English. But someone translated it for me. And someone at NASA who sent that letter had taken the trouble to underline that last sentence in the second paragraph. And the sentence basically says, jobs with NASA are only available or open to U.S. citizens. And the way I interpreted that was, I think what they intended for me to know was that I shouldn't even try. I took it the wrong way. I interpreted it as, come on over and become a citizen, and then you'll get a job with NASA. And so, sure enough, I did that, and I ended up in Hartford, Connecticut, 1968. Didn't speak English, came with $50 I had saved in the bank, and enrolled again in high school. I went back to high school and did another year, graduated again, learned English, and then I received a scholarship to the University of Connecticut. By mistake. The officials from the high school had recommended me for the scholarship because I had gotten some very good grades, and so I deserved the scholarship. But when I got to the university, they said, you can't really have the scholarship because we made a mistake because we thought you were from Puerto Rico instead of Costa Rica. So Costa Rica was not a very well-known country in those days. So I went back to high school, and the high school officials wrote a petition to the Connecticut legislature, which decided to grant the scholarship anyway, because they had made a mistake. And so I did, received the scholarship in the end, ended up at the University of Connecticut, and in '69 I watched Neil Armstrong step on the moon, and I was in the United States. I felt that I was a little less far, and that this had a certain kinship to why I was there. The University of Connecticut opened the eyes and the mind for me. I entered in the world of physics, engineering, and became guided by two individuals that changed my life. Quentin Kessel here on the right, on the upper right, professor of physics, and Howard Hayden, also professor of physics, both nuclear scientists. And I became enamored with science and physics, and I almost forgot about space, even though it is all the same. I began to work in fusion, thermonuclear, atomic collisions, a lot of these things that to me became fascinating areas of research. Graduated from the university and went off to graduate school at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, and became deeply involved in the quest for what Eisenhower had talked about in his United Nations speech, namely the harnessing of the atomic power for human benefit, producing electricity. And the possibility here was the harnessing of controlled thermonuclear fusion, meaning the same process that powers the sun and the stars. So our goal was to make a little tiny sun, a little tiny star in the laboratory, nothing less. And it was extraordinary to work in that, working with the best scientists in the world. Two of them became my thesis advisors, Professor David Rose and Professor Lawrence Litsky. Both of them have passed away since. But they guided me in my doctoral thesis on magnetic systems, magnetic structures. These are magnetic bottles. The idea was if you were going to make a sun on Earth, you couldn't hold it with anything because it was too hot. So you had to make the bottle or the container out of a magnet, a magnetic field, and a magnetic bottle. Well, I took that bottle and put a hole in it. And I figured that I just let a little bit of the sun escape, and that would be one heck of a rocket. And that was the beginning of the Vasimer engine. At that time, it was just a sketch in a napkin or in a piece of paper. And also in 1980, just by the convergence of events, NASA began testing the space shuttle. The space shuttle Enterprise began to fly, and it all of a sudden made calls for young U.S. Scientists to apply to become astronauts. And I had already become a citizen of the U.S. because I was working on fusion power and thermonuclear research, and I had all the credentials. I was in good shape, I was young, I had an advanced degree in science, my medical record was excellent, so I applied, and I was selected. And this happened in 1980. It was a dream come true for me, and it changed my life. I joined the class of 1980, and you can see here we were all very young at the time, but I am here, right there. Right next to me is Charlie Bolden, who today is the administrator of NASA. You can see how time passes and things change and people move in different directions. But this is when we began. And I became an astronaut, but also continued to do research. And NASA allowed me to fly this little plane here, right there, this little plane. I would get to fly that plane to Boston every month, land at Hanscom Field, Hanscom Air Force Base, and spend a week doing research in plasma physics. I couldn't believe it. I mean, it was almost a dream to be doing this and getting paid to do it. To actually, go and jump in your supersonic jet and go out clear across the United States, land, and then go to the best laboratories in the world to go and work on something that was completely extraordinary. But so was my life. And I began to develop this rocket, and this is the first experiments that we had at the MIT Plasma Fusion Center. This was the first sketch that you see here on my notebook, which I still have. And eventually this became a patent, and it was patented by the US government. Then the project got bigger and bigger, and we moved the laboratory from Boston, from MIT, to the Johnson Space Center in Houston. And the group became very large, involving people from national laboratories, other universities, NASA centers. And that's how it all began. The patents kept coming. We had improved a new patent which made the rocket even better. And some of the members of the team began to develop new theories and new techniques for making the rocket work even more efficiently and develop features on the rocket that made it very unique. And then in 2005, we became a private company because the government was too slow. We decided to privatize this project, and so the Ad Astra Rocket Company was born. It was born on January 14th on purpose, because January 14th was the date that the Huygens Cassini probe landed a package of instruments on the surface of Titan, one of the moons of Saturn. And I wanted that to be the date in which our company was incorporated. So we incorporated the company in Delaware, January 14th of 2005. And you can see here the negotiations with NASA. The company was originally called Ad Astra Technologies. Eventually, later we named it to Ad Astra Rocket Company. Ad Astra means, in Latin, to the stars. That's the meaning of the word. Within a few months after our signature of the agreement with NASA, we received our first injection of capital, $6 million, all of a sudden, from an angel investor, which changed also the course of the company. The company just immediately took off. We built our first plasma engine, which was company property, and it worked very well. This is the plasma shooting out of the exhaust, and this is the engine itself. And we decided to bring, or I guess I did, a little piece of that dream to my home country of Costa Rica. And we founded a laboratory in the northwestern part of Costa Rica, in the city of Liberia. And we called it Ad Astra Rocket Company, Costa Rica. Most people have no idea that here in Costa Rica we are building rocket engines to travel in space or to change the way space transportation is done, but we are. We do it. It was inaugurated in 2006, July 15th, by my mother, Professor Sam Ting, Nobel laureate in physics, one of the members of my advisory board, and Oscar Arias, also Nobel laureate, peace, and Professor Rolf Zagdeev, who was at the time the head of the Soviet Union space program and the special advisor to Mikhail Gorbachev on matters of space. So these are the people who came to inaugurate this little piece of the dream here in Costa Rica. And this is a team that we have in Costa Rica. You can see by just the looks of these kids that the average age of these rocket scientists is, when I'm not there, so you can eliminate this guy right here. When you get rid of that guy, the average age is about 26, which is great. This is the future, and this is what we're sowing here in Costa Rica. In Houston is also the same. We have the main laboratory is located in Houston. The group is not quite as young, but it is very seasoned and tremendous amount of experience. And this is the engine that has matured to what it is today, a 200 kilowatt plasma rocket, the most powerful plasma engine operating in the world today. This is what it looks like when it fires, and I'll even show you an actual firing. This is an actual video of a firing. Very silent, there's no sound to it. It is, however, a plasma operating at 2 million degrees. is one of the hottest things existing on planet Earth right now, controlled by a very strong magnetic field. When the plasma, the shot finishes, you will see here how hot these instruments get. You can see them how red hot all the instrumentation gets, and doesn't last very long. So those instruments have to be changed very frequently. So what do we do with this engine as a private company? I mean, we are not in the business of going to Mars. I mean, going to Mars is the romantic part. We like the romance, but we are a private company and we're here to do business. The global space market is $300 billion a year with an annual growth of about 7%, and Costa Rica does not, until now, play in this game. We want to make it able to play. It is a growing market of transportation and services, not anymore the exploration of or the binary activities of two superpowers such as the Soviet Union and the United States. Now we have a dozen and growing number of countries moving into space, and we are going to be there to support them. We're going to be doing removing the garbage that is up there, the great amount of trash that people have left, and pushing space stations and refueling satellites and picking up asteroids and doing activities on the moon and other places as well. So we have been maturing our rocket to be ready to capture that market, and we have, you can see here, along the number of years that we've been operating, we're now close to our launch date, launch readiness right here, sometime in the year 2016. This is what the rocket looks like today, and it will go on the International Space Station in the center of the station, right there. And the Earth no longer has that little Sputnik satellite that we saw once a day go by. Now we're talking about hundreds of thousands of these objects, many of them as big as a bus or bigger. Tons of these objects orbiting the Earth, controlling our lives, or being very important to our lives. And they constitute a hazard and a danger. If you all saw the movie Gravity, or those of you who have seen that movie, that's why that disaster occurs. So we're in the business now of cleanup. We are developing essentially a garbage truck that can go and pick up some of these orbiting objects that constitute a danger for the traffic lanes of space. We're also interested in reboosting space stations. This is an assembly of the rocket engine pushing the assembly of the space station while it allows the arrival of other vehicles to supply the station. And we also are interested in transportation in the Moon-Earth environment, which has become an area of business and an area of work. Also picking up asteroids. Asteroids have become sources of raw materials, iron, nickel, platinum, other rare metals, and people are beginning to think about mining these objects. And we also are able to protect the Earth, because the Earth has been and will be continued to be hit by asteroids that come from places that we are not able to detect, and we are now developing the capability to defend our planet from a potential harmful collision. And the economical transport of cargo places in the solar system. NASA has been our friend with the privatization of the project from the time that Mike Griffin, administrator of NASA, initiated brokered the relationships, and it's a relationship that has continued to grow over time with many agreements. So we're working very closely with NASA. And our business plan, as soon as we fly in 2016, has many areas of work which will bring revenue to the company. And I'm going to finish the presentation just by showing you some images, just a couple of images of the Earth as it looks today. This is the Middle East, as you can imagine here, the Nile River and the delta of the Nile. And the delta of the Nile at night. The world at night is awesome to see how much power and light there is for humanity to live on. The Florida Peninsula and the Florida Peninsula at night is no longer looks like an uninhabited world. There is the Italian Peninsula and the Italian Peninsula at night. So we are crowded, we are full, the world has got to find a way to have an escape valve for humanity to grow. And we think that growth will be space. This is a sequence of photographs taken of the space station orbiting over the Earth at night, over the pole. You can see the aurora, the beautiful lights of the aurora and the atmosphere. The atmosphere is very thin, and it tells you how fragile really the planet is. And these are the ships that will take our children to Mars. They will be powered by plasma rockets, utilizing nuclear power, just like that Nautilus submarine that I showed you at the very beginning, nuclear electric ships, which will get us to Mars and other points beyond. And this last photo was taken by one of our robots on the surface of Mars. The Curiosity robot on the surface of Mars is the sunset on the planet Mars. And someday, one of our children will take that picture and put it on Facebook, probably. So, thank you very much.